The rain came down in sheets. Fat raindrops hammered against the glass, a frantic, drumming sound. A clap of thunder, and a ghostly white flash of lightning split the night sky, illuminating a face in the hospital room that was just as pale. I jolted awake from the nightmare. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst from my throat. A short, sharp scream was caught in my windpipe. I gasped for air, cold sweat soaking the back of my hospital gown. That dream again. The days and nights I spent in a psych ward after failing my college entrance exams. The endless darkness, the biting smell of antiseptic. And Jessica's face, which looked so concerned but was filled with pity and ridicule. She stood by my hospital bed, peeling an apple, her voice as sweet as poison honey. "Chloe, don't blame me. Blame your bad luck. Look, I got into Harvard for you. I'm living the life you were supposed to have. You should be happy for me." "No, it wasn't like that. You did this to me." I shook my head, sobbing, trying to explain, but all I got were more sympathetic looks from the doctors and nurses, and a sedative that plunged me into unconsciousness. When I came to again, I looked around in a daze. This wasn't that suffocating hospital room. There were no cold iron bars, no air thick with despair and medicine. This was my bedroom. The calendar on the wall was counting down the days to the SATs. My desk was piled high with review materials. I had returned to the starting point, the day that decided my fate. My hand trembled as I reached out to touch the small hole on the corner of my desk, poked there by a pen tip during a frustrating afternoon in my junior year. The feeling was so real. I wasn't dreaming. I was reborn back on the first day of my senior year of high school. The frantic beating of my heart gradually calmed, replaced by a bone-chilling hatred that seeped from the very marrow of my bones. Jessica, my dear cousin. In my last life, it was on this very day that she knocked on my door and placed that poison gift in my hands. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came right on schedule, like a summons from fate. I took a deep breath, forcing down the murderous rage swirling in my eyes, and made my voice sound as soft and harmless as usual. "Come in." The door creaked open, and Jessica's sweet face peeked in, her eyes smiling like crescent moons. She was wearing the same school uniform as me, but she always managed to make it look delicate, with a kind of damsel in distress vibe. She was my uncle's daughter. Because his family lived far from the school, she had been living with us since freshman year. We were as close as sisters, at least, that's how I saw it in my past life. "Chloe, still up studying?" She tiptoed in, holding something clutched mysteriously behind her back. I stood up from my desk and squeezed out a perfect, slightly weary smile. "Yeah, Jess. School just started, gotta get back in the zone. I knew you were the hardest worker." Jessica smiled and brought her hand out in front of me. Lying in her open palm was an exquisite sachet made of silk brocade, embroidered with the words "Top Scholar." "Look, I went to the temple to get this success sachet for you. I heard it's incredibly effective. If you keep it by your pillow or hang it on your backpack, it'll help you focus and grant all your wishes. You'll definitely get into an Ivy League school." This was it. This sachet. In my past life, I treasured it. I was so moved by my cousin's thoughtfulness that I kept it with me day and night. I thought it was a symbol of our sisterly bond. I never knew it was the poison that would push me into hell. From the day I started carrying it, my mental state deteriorated. I couldn't concentrate in class. I had splitting headaches. My memory failed me. Finally, in the middle of the SATs, my mind went completely blank. I handed in my test early and failed miserably. And her, Jessica, my cousin whose grades were never as good as mine, she had a breakout performance on the exam that year. Like a dark horse, she got the top score in the state and was accepted into Harvard with flying colors. It wasn't until I was wasting away in the psych ward, occasionally hearing snippets of information from my parents during their visits, that I slowly pieced together the truth. She had long been jealous of my excellent grades and my happy family. She got this wicked charm from a distant relative who dabbled in the dark arts, and she used this sachet to slowly steal my sanity and destroy my future. Right now, that very sachet was right in front of me, emitting the same eerie, sweet fragrance I remembered from my past life. The scent felt like a venomous snake slithering through my nostrils and into my brain, stirring up a tidal wave of hatred. I wanted to scream. I wanted to leap forward and claw that fake smile off her face, to shove this toxic sachet down her throat. But I couldn't. I forced myself to look down, my long eyelashes hiding the blood-red fury in my eyes. When I looked up again, my face was a mask of surprise and gratitude. Wow, Jessica, you're too good to me. I snatched the sachet and clutched it tightly in my hand as if it were a priceless treasure. I brought it to my nose and took an exaggerated sniff, my face lighting up with bliss. It smells amazing. With this, I feel like I can do anything. Seeing my naive reaction, a flicker of contempt and triumph flashed in Jessica's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by an even thicker layer of tenderness. She lovingly patted my head, her voice full of expectation. Silly girl, we're sisters. Who else would I be this good to? You have to carry it every day for it to work. We're going to get into the best universities together. I nodded hard, my eyes even welling up with tears of gratitude. I'll carry it every single day, Jessica. I promise. She smiled, satisfied. After a few more words of advice, she turned and left my room. The moment the door clicked shut, the smile vanished from my face. I opened my hand and stared coldly at the exquisite poison resting in my palm. Jessica, this generous gift of yours, I will return it in full, and then some. You want to be the top scholar? Then I'll personally pave this road to hell for you. I walked over to the door and locked it. Then I returned to my desk, opened a drawer, and took out a small pair of scissors from the very back. The cold touch of the metal instantly cleared my chaotic thoughts. Revenge starts now. Under the warm glow of my desk lamp, the success sachet looked particularly jarring. The brocade fabric was smooth and delicate. The words top scholar, embroidered with golden thread, shimmered with a strange light. In my last life, I was fooled by its beautiful appearance, never once suspecting the venomous plot hidden beneath the thin layer of cloth. I took the scissors and carefully snipped a small opening along the side seam of the sachet. As the fabric tore, an even richer, sweeter scent filled the air. At first, the smell was refreshing, but after a few more breaths, a strange sense of irritation and dizziness would emanate from deep within my temples. This was the feeling, exactly the same as the one that had tormented me through countless sleepless nights in my past life. I emptied the contents onto a white sheet of paper. It was a mixture of crushed, multicolored plant matter and some tiny mineral-like crystals. Just by looking, it was impossible to identify the specific ingredients. In my last life, even after being locked in the psych ward, I only vaguely guessed that something was wrong with the sachet. I never figured out what it really was. But in this life, I couldn't be the fool who let herself be slaughtered. I had to understand it completely, so that Jessica would have no excuses when she met her end. I took a picture with my phone, zoomed in, and carefully observed the fragments. Then I opened my browser in incognito mode and started searching. My keywords were very deliberate. Herbs that cause dizziness, plants that induce confusion, ancient tranquilizer formulas. A flood of information came back, much of it unreliable. I patiently scrolled through page after page. Most of it was about common herbs for calming nerves or boosting energy, none of which matched what I had. Just as I was about to give up, an obscure link caught my eye. A forum dedicated to niche Chinese medicine and folk remedies. The forum was small, with an outdated interface, but the users seemed incredibly knowledgeable. I registered an anonymous account and created a new post. Title: Help Needed, Experts. What are these herbs? They make me dizzy. In the body of the post, I was even more careful. An elderly relative got me this calming sachet from the countryside, said it would help with my studies. But it makes me feel uncomfortable when I smell it, dizzy, lightheaded, and easily distracted. Could any experienced members please take a look and tell me what's in it, and if it might be harmful? I uploaded the high-resolution photo I had taken, then turned off my phone and waited. While I waited, I didn't stay idle. I carefully gathered the toxic herbs back onto the paper, sealed them in another small bag, and hid it inside a thick dictionary on the top shelf of my bookcase. It was a blind spot in our house, no one but me would ever touch it. After all that was done, I sat in my chair, closed my eyes, and forced myself to calmly review every detail of my past life. When did Jessica start getting jealous of me? Perhaps it began the day she moved into our home. My family was well off. My parents were both intellectuals who doted on me. My uncle's family, on the other hand, was not as well off, and my aunt favored her son, paying far less attention to Jessica. She saw everything I had. The beautiful room, the endless new clothes, my parents' unconditional love. The seeds of resentment had been planted in her heart long ago. And my grades had always been consistently better than hers, which was probably the final straw that broke her. Wasn't she trying hard enough? No, she worked very hard, even harder than I did. But sometimes talent is just that unfair. The harder she tried, the further she fell behind me. That bitterness and jealousy grew like vines, choking her heart until there was no room for anything else. So she chose a shortcut, the darkest, most wicked shortcut. She thought that by destroying me, she could take my place and live my life. It was almost laughably naive. Buzz. Buzz. The vibration of my phone pulled me back from my thoughts. I picked it up and saw a new reply to my forum post. My heart leaped into my throat. I tapped the notification. A user named OldSchoolDoc had replied. His avatar looked like an elderly, traditional doctor, and his reply was long and serious. Young friend, the contents of this photo are by no means benevolent. Do not go near it again. Several of the ingredients, such as datura pollen and the powdered root of Gelsemium elegans, are highly toxic. Although the dosage is small, long-term inhalation will cause chronic damage to the central nervous system, leading to headaches, hallucinations, memory loss, and mental confusion. What's more sinister is the addition of a mineral powder known as soul-devouring crystal, which is mentioned in some dark arts as being able to sap a person's life force. What you call helping with studies is utter nonsense. This is clearly designed to destroy a person's mind. This is a modified formula for the Soul Lock Sachet, and it is utterly evil. May I ask where you obtain this item? If you can provide details, please do. Such a harmful object should not exist in this world. Reading those words, my blood ran cold. The Soul Lock Sachet. What a vicious name. So everything I went through in my past life wasn't just a simple illness. It was a calculated, chronic poisoning of my mind. Jessica, from the very beginning, she wanted me to become a drooling, mindless lunatic. A profound chill shot up from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. I couldn't help but shiver. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't reply to the old doctor's questions. I knew he meant well, but I couldn't make this public. Without proof, it was all just talk. It would only tip her off. Besides, I didn't want Jessica to simply be punished. I wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine. I wanted her to experience for herself what this Soul Lock Sachet felt like. I wanted her to know what it was like to fall from grace, to go from a celebrated genius to a laughingstock, a lunatic. I suppressed my rage and calmly deleted my forum post and browsing history. The secret was out. Next up was tailoring a one-of-a-kind success sachet just for my dear cousin. I stood up, walked to the window and opened it. The storm outside had passed. The air was filled with the fresh scent of rain-soaked earth. I took a deep breath. The cool air made my mind clearer than ever before. Jessica, for this show, I'll be the director. The next day was Saturday. Early in the morning, I left the house, saying I was going to the bookstore to buy study guides. I didn't go straight to the bookstore. Instead, I made a detour to the city's largest herbal market. The market was bustling, the air thick with the complex aroma of various herbs. I wore a mask and pulled my hat down low, slipping into a small, inconspicuous-looking shop. "What can I get for you, young lady?" An old shopkeeper who had been dozing asked, lifting an eyelid. "Sir, I'd like to buy some herbs to help me focus and calm my nerves. I've been under a lot of stress with school, and wanted to make my own sachet." I recited the lines I'd prepared, acting like any other high school student worried about her grades. "Oh, that's easy." The shopkeeper perked up and took out several herbs from the cabinet behind him. "Peppermint, rosemary, lavender, mimosa bark, these will all work. Peppermint and rosemary are for focus, while lavender and mimosa bark help with sleep. See what you need." "Thanks, I'll take a little of each." I nodded, then asked casually, "Sir, do you know of any fragrances that make people feel dizzy? My desk mate got one from somewhere, and it smells strange." The shopkeeper glanced at me and snorted. "There's plenty of that shady stuff out there. Young lady, Don't mess with things you don't understand. All medicine has its risks. If you use it without knowing what you're doing, you could get into serious trouble. Just focus on your studies. Yes, you're right, I quickly agreed, not pressing the issue. I knew that a proper herbalist would never know about, much less tell me about, a wicked formula like the Soul Lock Sachet. Confirming its toxicity was enough. I bought the harmless herbs like peppermint and rosemary, then went to a nearby market to buy a piece of brocade fabric nearly identical in material and color to the sachet Jessica gave me, along with matching silk thread. When I got home, my parents were out. My aunt was in the living room with Jessica, watching TV and laughing uproariously. When she saw me, my aunt just gave me a cursory glance, but Jessica immediately rushed over with a warm greeting. Chloe, you're back. Did you find any good books? She tried to affectionately link her arm with mine, but I subtly sidestepped her, holding up my shopping bag. Just some workbooks. Jess, I'm going to my room. I still have a practice test to finish. Go on then, you little bookworm, Jessica said with a smile. But her eyes held that familiar, fleeting flash of contempt. Back in my room, I immediately locked the door. I spread all the materials I'd bought on my desk, took a deep breath, and began my first project since my rebirth. I took out the sealed bag containing the poison, put on gloves, and carefully poured the herbs onto a piece of paper. Then I took the peppermint and rosemary I had bought, crushed them to a similar consistency as the poison, and mixed them together. The calming sachet I made had a fresh, herbal scent, completely different from that eerie sweetness. Next came the most challenging part: sewing the sachet. In my previous life, my mom had taught me some simple needlework. Relying on memory, I threaded the needle and cut the brocade fabric into the same size and shape as the original. My movements were a bit clumsy. I pricked my finger several times, and tiny beads of red blood welled up, bringing a faint, sharp pain. But the pain made me feel incredibly alert and exhilarated. I knew I wasn't just sewing a simple sachet, but an intricate trap, a shackle that was about to drag Jessica into the abyss. After more than an hour, a new sachet, almost identical in appearance to the original, was finally complete. I filled it with my own calming blend and carefully stitched the final seam. Then I hung it on my headboard in a very conspicuous spot. With that done, the next crucial step was the switch. I needed the perfect opportunity, a time when both Jessica and my aunt were out of the house. That chance came in the afternoon. My aunt had plans to go shopping with friends, and Jessica was called out by her classmates. I was the only one left in the large house. I was like a leopard in hiding, waiting silently in my room. Once I was sure they were long gone, I held my breath and tiptoed to Jessica's door. It was unlocked. I gently turned the handle, slipped inside, and quickly closed the door behind me. Jessica's room was even more fanciful than mine, filled with lace and pink decorations. The air still held the cloying scent of her perfume. I had no time to admire it. I went straight to her desk. Like mine, it was piled high with review materials. My heart pounded as I tried to recall a fuzzy memory from my past life. I remembered Jessica had a habit of hiding things she considered important and private in a secret compartment at the bottom of her desk drawer. The compartment was very well hidden. You would never find it unless you pulled the entire drawer out. I crouched down and opened the bottom drawer. It was filled with diaries and other girly trinkets. I lifted the whole drawer out, set it aside, and reached inside the empty space. Sure enough, at the bottom of the drawer cavity, my fingers found a loose wooden panel. I gently pried it open, revealing a shallow, hidden compartment. I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight. There was nothing special inside, just a few photos of her with some boy and an empty sachet, identical to the one I now held. No, not quite identical. The embroidery on this one was cruder, as if it had been made in a hurry. I instantly understood. This must have been her prototype for the ritual, or perhaps a practice sample. I sneered. It seemed she had planned this for a long time, and was well prepared. But this wasn't my target. What I needed to do was place the real success sachet somewhere she would encounter it daily, but not easily discover. My eyes scanned her desk, finally landing on a pen holder on the side. No, too obvious. I looked at the stack of notebooks on the corner of her desk. Not good either. What if a teacher collected them for review? Finally, My gaze settled on her desk drawer, the very one where she kept her diaries. But I couldn't put it in the secret compartment. She might not find it for a long time. I had an idea. I put the drawer back in, then pulled it open again. I took the poison sachet and, using a small piece of clear tape, carefully stuck it to the top panel on the inside of the drawer cavity. In this position, whenever she opened the drawer to get something, the sachet would hang just above her books and stationery. The scent would slowly seep out and fill the entire drawer. And unless she stuck her head inside and looked up, she would never discover this hidden gift. She opened this drawer countless times a day to get a pen, a notebook, her diary. The poison would be her constant companion, day after day, moment after moment. I admired my handiwork, returned everything to its original state, and silently slipped out of her room. Back in my own room, I deliberately left the door open. A short while later, my aunt came home. As was her habit, she came into my room to check on my studies. As soon as she entered, she saw the new calming sachet on my headboard. "Well, Chloe, what's this?" "It's quite pretty," my aunt asked casually. I pretended to smile shyly. "It's a success sachet from Jessica. She said it would help me get into a good university, so I hung it by my bed, hoping it works." "Oh, from Jessica." My aunt's tone was dismissive, but she still nodded. "She's just a kind-hearted girl, good to everyone. All right, you get back to your studies. Don't waste your time on this useless stuff." With that, she turned and left. I watched her leave, the smile on my lips deepening. "Thank you for being my witness, Auntie. From this day forward, this sachet is officially hanging in my room, while the real poison has already begun to silently work its magic on its true owner. Good luck with your future, Jessica." On Monday morning, I walked to school with Jessica as usual. She seemed to be in a great mood, chattering all the way about her weekend plans with friends and how amazing the new movie was. She was wearing light makeup and looked radiant, a stark contrast to the bookworm with dark circles and a bare face walking beside her. "Chloe, you look exhausted. Didn't you sleep well last night?" she asked with feigned concern, her eyes instinctively glancing at the success sachet hanging on my backpack. The one on my backpack was, of course, the harmless one I'd made myself. I yawned, rubbed my eyes, and deliberately put on a tired expression. "I don't know what's wrong with me lately. I keep having nightmares, and it's hard to focus in class during the day." "Oh no, that's not good." Jessica's voice was filled with exaggerated worry, but she could barely hide the smile in her eyes. "Is it the stress from studying? Are you carrying the sachet I gave you? It's really calming. You have to carry it every day for it to work." I am, I said, pointing to the sachet on my bag, my voice weak. Maybe it's just not working for me." "How could that be?" "You just have to believe," she said, patting my shoulder consolingly. "You're just overthinking things. Try to relax." I just mumbled an aha and looked down, saying no more. I knew my performance had completely put her at ease. She must now believe her success sachet was working, gloating over the success of her plan. First period was math. The teacher suggested a pop quiz to see how well everyone had retained the material over the weekend. The tests were handed out. The questions weren't difficult, all covering basic concepts. I skimmed through them. I knew how to do most of them. In my previous life, I would have aced a quiz like this. But not now. I had to play weak, to follow my strategy of pretending to be a lamb. I picked up my pen and deliberately made some simple mistakes on a few key problems, like messing up a basic formula or intentionally skipping a step in my calculations. I even filled in C for the last multiple choice question when the correct answer was A. After I was done, I glanced at Jessica, who was sitting diagonally in front of me. She was writing furiously, her brow slightly furrowed, looking incredibly focused. I noticed when she opened her drawer to get her white out. Her movements were perfectly natural. She had no idea about the gift taped to the top of the drawer. Perfect. The quiz results came out quickly. I got an 85, a score that would have been a disgrace to my former self. And Jessica got a 98, the highest in the class. When the math teacher announced the scores, he made a point of praising her. "Jessica has shown great improvement this time. She deserves recognition. I hope everyone can learn from her and not get complacent, even on small quizzes." As he spoke, his gaze drifted over to me, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. The whole class turned to stare at me, some surprised, some confused, some gloating. I could feel their eyes on me like needles. Jessica, however, was the picture of humility. She stood up, bowed to the teacher and the class, and said with a smile, "Thank you, teacher. I'll keep working hard. Chloe just had an off day. She's usually much better than me." Her words sounded like she was defending me, but they were really just rubbing salt in the wound. That saccharine, manipulative tone instantly won her points with a few classmates, who shot her looks of approval. I lowered my head, burying my face in my textbook, my shoulders shaking slightly, as if I were crying from humiliation. The fallout from the quiz continued at the dinner table that evening. My aunt was in an exceptionally good mood, piling food onto Jessica's plate until her bowl looked like a small mountain. "Our Jessica is really something now, getting first place in math. We never would have imagined," my aunt said, her voice brimming with pride. My parents chimed in with smiles. "Jessica is definitely getting more and more impressive. Keep it up. It's all thanks to you and Uncle and Auntie's good teaching," Jessica said sweetly. She then turned to me and placed a piece of my favorite braised pork in my bowl. "Chloe, don't be sad. It's just one little quiz. It doesn't mean anything. You were just nervous. You'll do great next time." I silently picked at my rice without a word. Seeing this, my aunt immediately started in with her passive-aggressive comments. "Some people just can't handle the pressure. They look so smart usually, but when it matters, they fall apart. Not like our Jessica, who's so steady. It looks like that success sachet is really something special, a real blessing. Unlike some people who don't even appreciate a good thing when it's given to them, wasting our Jessica's kind intentions." Her words were clearly aimed at me. My parents' faces grew awkward, but they didn't say anything to defend me. After all, the scores were the hard truth. It was a fact that I had done poorly. I put down my chopsticks, looked up with red-rimmed eyes, and said with a choked voice, "Auntie, I just haven't been feeling well lately." All right, let's just eat. Why bring this up now?" My dad finally interjected, but his tone also held a hint of impatience. "If you didn't do well, then spend more time studying. Figure out what went wrong. What's the use of crying about it here?" In that moment, the same sense of despair and isolation from my past life washed over me. I looked at these people, my supposed family, their faces so alien under the dining room lights. So this is what family meant. When faced with tangible benefits, in this case, grades and reputation, it was so fragile. I took a deep breath and forced back the tears. Then I looked up and gave Jessica and my aunt a smile that was uglier than crying. "You're right, Jessica, Auntie. It's my own fault. I'll try to get it together." My pathetic, reformed act clearly satisfied them. My aunt said no more, and Jessica wore the smile of a victor. They both thought I was beginning to crumble, sliding into the abyss they had prepared for me. They had no idea that their every victory, their every moment of smug satisfaction, was just another part of my plan. I lowered my head and continued to eat, a cold, mocking smile playing on my lips in a corner no one could see. "Enjoy your stolen glory while it lasts, Jessica. Because the higher you climb, the harder you'll fall." The dust from the pop quiz had barely settled when the first monthly exams arrived. It was the first major, official test since the start of senior year, and its importance went without saying. Everyone's nerves were stretched taut. For the past couple of weeks, I had been strictly following my downfall script. In class, I no longer answered questions enthusiastically. Instead, I often looked distracted or zoned out. The number of errors in my homework increased, and my handwriting grew messy. All of my teachers had spoken to me, and without exception, they all expressed deep disappointment and concern. Jessica, on the other hand, was my polar opposite. She became more and more diligent, arriving at the classroom first every day, and being the last to leave. Her desk was always piled high with study guides, and her notes were dense and meticulous. She became the comeback kid the teachers praised, a role model for all the other students. Only I knew that it was all a facade. On several occasions, when I got up late at night for a drink of water, I saw that the light in her room was still on, but I knew she wasn't studying. Once, I crept up to her door and heard not the rustling of pages, but the sound of anxious, frustrated pacing. The effects of the sachet were slowly but surely taking hold. I noticed her dark circles were getting heavier, impossible to completely conceal even with makeup. In class, she appeared to be listening intently, but her fingers would drum restlessly on the desk, and her gaze would often lose focus. She became more sensitive and irritable than before, getting into arguments with the student behind her over trivial matters several times. But strangely, whenever there was a test, she was like a different person. She would become unusually energetic, her eyes shining, and she would answer questions at lightning speed, as if possessed by a god. I suspected that certain ingredients in the toxic sachet could temporarily stimulate the nervous system, creating the illusion of being in the zone. But this was like drinking poison to quench a thirst, a brief burst of performance at the expense of her future. She had clearly mistaken this pathological excitement for the good luck and wisdom brought by the sachet. Her reliance on it had reached the point of superstition. The night before the monthly exam, I saw her once again carefully open that drawer, as if making an offering. She had no idea that every time she opened it, she was actively inhaling the poison that was destroying her. The exams began as scheduled. I walked into the testing room, my heart as calm as still water. For me, this was just a performance. I needed a failure convincing enough to elevate Jessica to godlike status, to make her drop her guard against me completely. The first test was English, and the essay prompt was masks. I looked at the topic and couldn't help but sneer. It was practically tailor-made for Jessica. I picked up my pen and wrote a flowery but shallow essay, repeating a simple idea over and over, hollow and meaningless. On the sections that required demonstrating literary knowledge, like poetry memorization and reading comprehension, I deliberately left several blanks. For the following tests, math, science, and history, I used the same strategy. I made intentional mistakes on the problems I was most confident about. For the final, most challenging questions that separated the top students, I simply wrote solution and left a large blank space. I could clearly feel the proctor's gaze lingering on my paper as he walked by, filled with regret and confusion. And Jessica, in another testing room, must have been enjoying her peak experience, her thoughts flowing effortlessly. When I walked out of the school after the last exam, the sky was already dark. Jessica came out with a few other students, who surrounded her like satellites, chattering about the questions. "Jessica, did you solve that last physics problem?" I didn't even understand the question. I did. It wasn't that hard, actually. Just a variation of the conservation of energy principle. You just had to think about it from a different angle, Jessica said, a casual arrogance in her tone. "Wow, you're amazing. You're definitely going to be first in our grade this time." "No way, don't say that. Chloe is really smart too." She was being modest, but her eyes shot a provocative, triumphant look at me over the crowd. I lowered my head, silently pushed my bike, and melted into the evening traffic like a dejected loser. The days waiting for the results were torturous, and the atmosphere at home was suffocating. My parents looked at me with disappointment. They no longer asked about my studies and barely spoke to me at all. My aunt was the complete opposite. She was cheerful every day, cooking up a storm for Jessica and talking endlessly about her bright future. If our Jessica can get into the top 10 in the grade this time, it's not impossible for her to aim for the Ivies when the time comes. Exactly. This kid is just a late bloomer. Once she gets going, her potential is limitless. Every word of their conversation was like a needle, pricking my parents' hearts, and mine. Finally, the results were out. The homeroom teacher posted the bright red list on the bulletin board at the back of the classroom. In that instant, the entire class swarmed towards it like a tidal wave. I didn't move. I sat quietly in my seat, staring out the window. Whoa. Jessica, 3rd in the grade, 15th in the city. Oh my God. A shout broke the silence. For real? That's insane. What about Chloe? Wasn't she always number 1? Let me see, here it is. Chloe, 28th in our class, 173rd in the grade. The moment that number was announced, the classroom fell into a dead silence. Everyone turned to look at me with an incredulous mix of pity and scorn. From 1st in the grade to 173rd, such a fall was a devastating blow for any former top student. Surrounded by her admirers, Jessica slowly walked over to me. Her face was a mask of perfectly measured worry and concern. Chloe, are you okay? She asked softly, crouching down beside me. Were you not feeling well? Did it affect your performance? I looked up at her, my eyes vacant. Tears welled up, but I stubbornly refused to let them fall. I shook my head, my voice hoarse. I'm fine. Congratulations, Jess. My vulnerability and grace only deepened the look of triumph in her eyes. She sighed, like a victor comforting the vanquished. It's okay, Chloe. It's just one test. I know you'll catch up soon. Her words drew a chorus of praise from the surrounding students. You're so nice, Jessica. Yeah, not like some people who just can't handle the pressure. I listened to their murmurs and buried my head even deeper. You must feel like you've completely won, Jessica. You think you've climbed to the peak of your dreams by stepping on me. But you have no idea that it's not a peak. It's an altar. And I'm the one who personally pushed you onto it, just waiting for the final sacrifice. The shockwave from the exam results reached its peak at the family dinner that night. To celebrate Jessica's historic achievement, my aunt had booked a table at a high-end restaurant. It was called a family gathering, but in reality, it was a one-woman award ceremony for Jessica. The private room was brightly lit, but the atmosphere felt strange. My aunt and uncle were beaming, loudly ordering dishes from the waiter, as if they wanted the whole world to know their daughter was a future valedictorian. My parents were more reserved and quiet, forcing smiles and occasionally casting worried, reproachful glances my way. Here's to Jessica. Our Jessica has really made us proud, my uncle said, raising his glass, his face glowing with pride. Yes, yes, 3rd in the grade, 15th in the city. Who wouldn't be envious of those results? My aunt chimed in, her eyes sweeping smugly over my parents. Right, sis, brother-in-law? My parents could only nod awkwardly. Yes, Jessica is truly outstanding. This is worth celebrating. She's just such a good kid, so motivated, my aunt said, then changed her tune with a sigh, her gaze landing on me. Unlike some kids who get good grades once and become complacent, stop trying. Their grades just plummet. It's so worrying. The air in the room instantly froze. All eyes were on me. I could feel my parents' stares boring into my back, and Jessica's look of fake sympathy. My hand tightened around my chopsticks, my knuckles turning white. Helen, what are you talking about? My mom finally snapped, her face turning ugly. It's just one bad test. How can you talk about her like that? What did I say? Was I wrong? My aunt's voice shot up, full of self-righteous indignation. Sis, I'm helping you discipline your child. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Look at Chloe now, all gloomy and lifeless. Where's the confident top student from before? It's all because you spoil her. My mom was so angry she was speechless. All right, that's enough from both of you, my dad cut in, his voice low, but his eyes were also filled with disappointment as he looked at me. Chloe, what your aunt said wasn't nice, but there's some truth to it. You need to reflect on what went wrong and not let your mother and me down. His words, meant to be a peacemaking gesture, were a final judgment. In his mind, he had already decided I was the arrogant, lazy cautionary tale. My heart sank. It was the same in my past life. Every time my performance slipped because of the sachet, they reacted the same way. First concern, then disappointment, and finally weary resignation. They never tried to find out the real reason for my decline, simply blaming it on my lack of effort and poor mental fortitude. And Jessica, the real culprit, always played the part of the peacemaker and caring sister. Uncle, Auntie, don't blame Chloe, she said, standing up with her glass of juice, a thoughtful and considerate smile on her face. She just hasn't found her footing yet. I'm sure she'll get back on track soon. She's smarter than me, she works harder than me, and she's the best in our family. She paused, then walked over to me and gently patted my shoulder. Chloe, don't be discouraged. Maybe you haven't been resting well, and it affected the exam? How about you borrow my success sachet for a while? Maybe it can really help you calm down. The moment she finished speaking, my aunt screeched like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Absolutely not. That sachet is Jessica's good luck charm. It's what's going to make her valedictorian. You can't just lend it to someone. What if you lend all the good luck away with it? Her superstitious and selfish words stunned everyone at the table. My parents' faces turned shades of red and white with embarrassment. I sneered inwardly, but on the outside, I let 2 streams of tears roll down my cheeks. I shot up from my seat, my voice choked with sobs. No, thank you, Jessica. I don't need it. I did poorly because I'm stupid, because I didn't try hard enough. It has nothing to do with luck. You all enjoy your dinner. I'm full. With that, I pushed back my chair and stormed out of the room without a backward glance. Behind me, I heard my mother's anxious cries and my aunt's disgruntled complaints. Look at that child. What a temper. Sis, don't worry about her. Let her cool off. Kids these days are just too fragile. You can't say a word to them. I didn't slow down. I ran out of the restaurant, and the cold night wind hit my face like a knife. But I felt incredibly clear-headed. This family trial was even more successful than I had anticipated. Not only did it make Jessica and my aunt completely drop their guard, but more importantly, it showed me my parents for who they really were. In their hearts, their daughter's feelings were far less important than their reputation among relatives. Fine. That way, when I execute my final plan, I won't feel any unnecessary guilt or hesitation. I wiped away my tears, looked up at the city sky glowing red from the neon lights, and stood tall. From now on, I walked this path alone. And I was happy to, because I knew that at the end of the road was my own bright future. And they would all bear witness to Jessica's slow march toward her own destruction. Time flew, and soon it was time for the first citywide mock exams. The importance of these joint simulation tests was self-evident. They weren't just a measure of the past few months of study, but also a full-scale dress rehearsal for a student's mental and physical readiness for the real thing. The rankings were a strong predictor of the final college entrance exam results. In the weeks leading up to it, the atmosphere at school became incredibly tense. Everyone was wound up like a clock, meticulously planning every minute of every day. I continued to play the part of the burnout, my grades hovering in the lower middle range. I dozed off in class and my homework was riddled with errors. I went from being a regular in the teachers' offices to being strategically ignored. Now, when they saw me, their eyes held nothing but weary sighs. Jessica, meanwhile, was elevated to an unprecedented pedestal. She basked in the admiration of everyone, the favor of the teachers, the envy of her classmates, and the pride of her parents. She became the shining star of our ordinary high school, our great hope for the Ivy League. But only I could see that beneath this false glory, she was being hollowed out. Her health was getting worse, and her anxiety was becoming more severe. She had to chug coffee all day just to stay awake. Her temper grew more erratic. One moment she'd be manic and euphoric, the next she'd fall into a prolonged, depressive silence over something trivial. One evening during study hall, I saw her slumped over her desk, her shoulders trembling silently in the dark. She seemed to be crying. But the next day, she would show up to class with perfect makeup, looking vibrant, as if the previous night's vulnerability had never happened. She was like a tightrope walker, using all her strength to maintain her genius girl persona, oblivious to the fact that I had already secretly cut the rope. Her dependence on the sachet had become pathological. The poison charm I'd taped inside her drawer had become her sole source of spiritual support. She was convinced it was the sachet that had granted her superhuman intelligence and luck, transforming her completely. To prepare for the mock exams, she became even more devout. The first thing she did every morning was open that drawer, stick her head inside, and take a deep breath, as if performing some kind of mystical ritual. I almost laughed out loud watching her. She was eagerly and actively exposing herself to the source of the poison. Not even the gods could save her now. The mock exam locations were assigned randomly across the city, and Jessica and I were placed in different schools. This suited me perfectly. I didn't need to witness her glory firsthand. It would have made me sick. The exam lasted 2 days. Over those 2 days, I completed every subject with a sense of unprecedented calm. This time, I didn't hold back as I had in the monthly exams. I gave it my all, tackling every question with 100% of my ability. The knowledge I had once forgotten, the problem-solving strategies I had locked away, all came back to life at the tip of my pen. The thrill of my brain working at high speed was exhilarating. This was my intellect, a treasure that no one, no matter how devious, could ever steal from me. Meanwhile, though I wasn't there to see it, I could imagine Jessica's exam process perfectly. She must have entered that same pathological state of mania again, her brain firing on all cylinders under the drug's stimulation, her pen flying across the page. She would mistake this feeling of burning through her life force for a burst of her own innate genius. When I got home after the exams, my aunt immediately began fussing over Jessica, while I was completely ignored. "Jessica, how did it go? Are you confident?" "It was okay, Mom. The questions didn't seem too hard." "I think I did pretty well," Jessica said. Her face was etched with fatigue, but her eyes shone with confidence and arrogance. That's great, my aunt said, overjoyed. She turned to my parents. "Sis, brother-in-law, I think our Jessica has a real shot at the top 10 in the city this time." My parents just smiled without responding. They looked at me, as if wanting to ask how I did, but the words died on their lips, replaced by a sigh of resignation. I paid them no mind and went straight to my room. The wait for the results was agonizing, but this time, not for me. It was agonizing for Jessica. In the days following the exam, her condition took a sharp turn for the worse. Perhaps from overexerting herself, she seemed to wilt like a frost-bitten flower. She began to suffer from severe insomnia, and during the day, she was completely out of it. Several times, I saw her walking through the living room, only to stop abruptly and stare blankly around her, as if she had no idea where she was. My aunt thought she was just exhausted and made her all sorts of nourishing soups, but nothing helped. I, on the other hand, used this time to prepare for the next phase of my plan. The day the mock exam results were released, the atmosphere at school was electric. The list was posted on the bulletin board at the back of the class again. This time, I walked over to it. From the edge of the crowd, I saw the two names at the top. Chloe total score, 715, grade rank, 1 city rank 1. Jessica total score, 698, grade rank, 2 city rank 9. A slow smile spread across my face. The students around me, seeing those names and ranks, erupted in a massive uproar. Am I seeing things? Chloe is number 1 in the city. I thought she was washed up. What happened? Was she hiding her true strength all this time? Jessica is incredible too, 9th in the city. Our school has 2 titans this year. But this comeback is just insane. Amidst all the chatter, Jessica pushed through the crowd and stood before the results list. When she saw my name above hers, and in the number 1 spot for the entire city, the color drained from her face. Her eyes widened in disbelief, her lips trembled, and her body began to sway. "No, impossible," she muttered, her voice so soft only she could hear. "This has to be impossible. I'm supposed to be first, Just then, our homeroom teacher walked in, beaming and holding a stack of honor certificates. "Settle down, everyone. I have some incredible news for you all." He cleared his throat and announced excitedly, "In this citywide mock exam, our very own Chloe has taken the top prize for the STEM track with an absolutely dominant score. At the same time, Jessica has also achieved an outstanding result, placing 9th in the city. Let's give them a huge round of applause." The classroom exploded with thunderous applause. Everyone looked at me with a mixture of awe, curiosity, and admiration. And Jessica, standing in the middle of the applause meant for both of us, turned even paler. She stared at me, her eyes filled with venom, jealousy, and profound confusion. She couldn't understand why her trusted success Sachet had suddenly failed her. Even more, she couldn't understand how I, after being a burnout for so long, could return like a king overnight and reclaim everything that should have been mine. I met her gaze and gave her a slight, smiling nod. To her, that smile was undoubtedly a blatant provocation. I wanted her to be confused. I wanted her to doubt. I wanted her to descend into a spiral of self-negating madness. This gift I had so carefully prepared for her, this failure on the mock exam, was a fatal lure. It would make her question the efficacy of the success sachet, pushing her to do something even more frantic, more irrational. The game of building her up only to watch her fall had only just reached its most exciting part. Don't worry, Jessica. The show is just getting started. The shocking reversal of the mock exam results completely changed my status at school. I went from a fallen genius back to the study god that teachers and students looked up to. Jessica, on the other hand, fell from her pedestal. While ranking 9th in the city was still brilliant, it was instantly overshadowed by my #1 spot. What she couldn't accept wasn't the small gap in our scores, but the immense frustration of being suppressed and surpassed by me once again. Her proud comeback story had become a joke overnight. To honor us, the school arranged for a special experience sharing session during the Monday flag-raising ceremony, where Jessica and I would speak as student representatives. The arrangement was dripping with irony. At the ceremony, the principal passionately read our names and scores from the stage, drawing envious gazes from the thousands of students below. When it was Jessica's turn to speak, she forced herself to appear energetic, walked up to the podium with a practiced smile, and began her speech. Her speech was well written, full of flowery language and positive energy. She talked about how she went from being an average student to achieving a miraculous comeback through relentless effort and scientific methods. She delivered it with such emotion that she received waves of applause. But listening to it just made me sick. The so-called study methods she mentioned, like the error analysis method and mind mapping, were all things I had developed in my past life and shared with her without reservation. Now, she was proudly claiming them as her own. She stood on stage, bathed in sunlight and applause, looking like a true success story. And I stood right behind her, coldly watching her performance. Then it was my turn. I hadn't prepared a speech. I walked to the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces, my heart calm. Hello everyone. I'm Chloe from Class 3-1. My voice carried clearly across the entire field. Jessica has already shared some excellent study methods, so I won't repeat them. Today, I just want to share 3 words with you. The first is focus. When you study, please put aside all distractions, your phone, games, unnecessary social events, and immerse yourself completely in the ocean of knowledge. Only through focus can you truly understand and absorb. The second is persistence. Learning is a marathon, not a sprint. A couple of successes are nothing to be proud of, and a couple of failures are no reason to give up. What matters is that you have the tenacity to keep trying, like water dripping on a stone. The third and most important is honesty. I paused, my gaze sweeping over Jessica, whose face had stiffened beside me. Be honest about your own weaknesses, be honest about your exam scores, and most importantly, be honest with yourself. Don't try to take shortcuts. Don't delude yourself into thinking you can achieve false glory through improper means. Because every gift bestowed by fate has a price tag attached. Anything gained through trickery will one day be repaid, with interest. Wisdom is the only treasure that cannot be stolen. Thank you. My speech was short and unadorned, but when I finished, the crowd was silent for a moment before erupting in applause even louder than before. I could see understanding and agreement in the eyes of many students. I didn't look at Jessica, but I could feel her body go rigid and sense the hateful, terrified glare she shot my way. She had definitely understood the subtext of my words. She was scared. Scared that I knew her secret. Back at home, another very different family trial awaited us. The atmosphere at the dinner table was terribly tense. My aunt and Jessica were silent, just picking at their food. My parents, on the other hand, were positively beaming, constantly putting food on my plate. Chloe, you did so wonderfully this time. You've made us so proud. My mom said, grinning from ear to ear. I knew it. There's no way my daughter isn't brilliant. She must have just been tired before. #1 in the city. Our family hasn't had a scholar like this in generations. My dad added, happily taking a sip of his drink. My aunt finally couldn't take it anymore. She put down her chopsticks and said with a fake smile, Sis, brother-in-law, it's great that Chloe did well. But you know how kids are, their grades go up and down. We can't let her get arrogant just because of one good test. Our Chloe would never, my mom retorted immediately. The fact that she got first place proves she has the ability. Unlike some people who get lucky once, and then paraded around like they're on top of the world. The jab was clearly a comeback for my aunt's earlier taunts. My aunt's face turned beet red. Sis, what's that supposed to mean? Are you saying our Jessica got lucky? Have you not seen how hard she works? I didn't say that. You're the one jumping to conclusions. Just as the two women were about to start a full-blown fight, Jessica suddenly burst into tears with a loud wah. Auntie, I know you've always looked down on me, she sobbed, a picture of pity and distress. When I do well, you say it's luck. When Chloe does well, it's talent. I know I'm not smart. I can never be as good as Chloe no matter how hard I try, boo-hoo. Her crying instantly cast her as the victim. My parents looked awkward. My mom opened her mouth to say something but held back when she saw the state Jessica was in. My uncle immediately stood up and patted Jessica's back. There, don't cry, Jessica. Who said you're not smart? You're the best in your father's eyes. Some people just can't stand to see others succeed. His words were aimed squarely at my mom. I watched this whole farce with amusement. I put down my utensils, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and stood up with a gentle smile. Dad, Mom, Uncle, Auntie, please don't fight. I walked over to Jessica, handed her a tissue, and said softly, don't cry, Jess. I've always thought you were brilliant. We both did really well this time. It should be a happy occasion, right? I paused, looked her straight in the eye, and continued, word by word. Besides, what I said at the ceremony wasn't about you. I just think that when it comes to studying, you have to be down to earth. Don't you agree? My words were like a gentle knife, plunging precisely into her deepest fear. Her crying stopped abruptly, and her body gave an involuntary shudder. She looked up at me, terrified, her lips trembling, unable to form a single word. In my calm gaze, she saw absolute certainty. In that moment, she finally knew. I knew. I knew everything. The family drama ended abruptly with Jessica feeling unwell. She was helped back to her room by my aunt and uncle. My parents' good mood was ruined, and they lost their appetite. Only I was pleased. I knew that from this night on, Jessica would never have another peaceful night's sleep. The seeds of doubt and fear had been planted in her heart by my own hand. Now they would sprout, grow, and become a towering tree that would ultimately consume her. After the mock exam, while everyone was still reeling from my comeback, there was one person who never showed a hint of doubt in me. My deskmate Leo. Leo was one of the athletes in our class. He was tall, with a healthy sun-kissed complexion. Years of playing basketball had given him a lean, athletic build. His personality was just like his appearance. Sunny, straightforward, maybe even a little simple-minded. During the time my grades plummeted and everyone else avoided me, he was the only one who still talked to me like normal. When I was stuck on a difficult problem, he would awkwardly slide his own workbook over and say, mine's probably wrong, but maybe it'll give you an idea. After I'd been chewed out by a teacher and was slumped over my desk in despair, he would secretly slip a cold Coke into my desk cubby. He never asked questions or offered grand, comforting speeches, but his small gestures were like a sliver of light in my darkest, most oppressive days. When the mock exam results came out, everyone crowded around me with compliments and praise. Only he acted as usual. When I returned to my seat, he just nudged me with his elbow, grinned, and said one word. Badass. That single word felt more comforting than 1,000 praises. During gym class on Wednesday afternoon, most students stayed in the classroom to study during free time. I needed some fresh air, so I went to the bleachers by myself. The early summer breeze was warm and comforting. I leaned against the railing, looking out over the empty field, letting my mind drift. Hey, genius, what are you thinking about all alone? A familiar voice said from behind me. I turned to see Leo walking toward me with a basketball, a light sheen of sweat on his forehead, a smile on his face. Nothing much, just getting some air, I said with a smile. He sat down on the steps next to me, placed the basketball by his feet, and pulled a piece of candy from his pocket. He unwrapped it and held it out to me. Here for your blood sugar. All that thinking must be exhausting. I paused for a moment, then took it. Thanks. The sweetness of the candy melted on my tongue, dispelling the last traces of gloom in my heart. He looked at me, hesitated, and then finally spoke. Chloe, about that time before, are you okay? I shook my head. It's all in the past. I knew it. He seemed relieved, but also like he'd expected it all along. He grinned. I never believed that the Chloe who could explain physics problems better than the teacher would suddenly turn into an idiot. I knew something was up. His words warmed my heart. To have someone in the world who believes in you unconditionally is a tremendous stroke of luck. He looked at me, his expression serious, and lowered his voice. Is it your cousin? I always thought there was something weird about her. The way she looks at you isn't like a sister, it's like an enemy. And her smile is so fake, like she's wearing a mask. It gives me the creeps. I was surprised that a seemingly carefree guy like him could be so observant. In that moment, my defenses wavered slightly. Since my rebirth, I had been fighting this battle alone. I had wrapped myself in thick armor, using indifference and pretense to face the world. I didn't dare trust anyone or confide in anyone. But looking into Leo's clear, honest eyes, I suddenly felt an impulse. Maybe I didn't have to carry it all by myself. Leo, I said, looking at him seriously, if I told you my grades dropped because of her, would you believe me? He didn't show any surprise. Instead, he nodded as if his suspicions had just been confirmed. I believe you. Why? A gut feeling. He scratched his head, looking a little embarrassed. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I can't figure out complicated stuff. But my mom always told me that a person's eyes can't lie. Your cousin looks at you with nothing but jealousy. And you used to look at her with affection, but now it's disgust and suspicion. I was silent. He continued, at the assembly, when you gave that speech about honesty and shortcuts, I felt like you were talking about her. I guess then that something must have happened between you two. I gave a wry smile. You see things more clearly than most. Of course. I'm the point guard on the school basketball team. My specialty is seeing the whole court, he said, puffing out his chest proudly before his expression turned serious again. So, what really happened? How did she hurt you? Do you need my help? Like I could corner her in an alley after school and beat her up for you? I couldn't help but let out a laugh at his earnest, if violent, suggestion. It was the first time I had genuinely laughed since my rebirth. No, but thank you. I shook my head, the tension in my heart seeming to dissipate with that laugh. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Besides, for someone like her, fists are too easy. I want her to be the one who sends herself to hell. Leo nodded, not quite understanding, but he didn't press further. He just said, okay. Whatever you do, I'm on your side. If you need a hand with anything, just say the word. Okay, I said, nodding firmly. In that moment, I no longer felt like I was alone. I had a steadfast, trustworthy ally behind me. Though I had no intention of dragging him into this complicated mess, just knowing he was there was enough to make me feel secure and warm. We didn't talk about the heavy topic anymore. He started telling me funny stories about the basketball team, about how he'd made a game-winning three-pointer in the final seconds of a crucial match. In the sunlight, his profile was sharp, his eyes shining with the clean, passionate fire of youth. I listened quietly, a sense of peace settling over me. It turned out that besides revenge, there were still so many beautiful things in the world. Like the afternoon breeze, sweet candy, and a true friend. These were all things my past self had never experienced. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for your cruelty, which showed me the darkness of the human heart, but also taught me to cherish the true goodness around me. And in return, I will make you lose everything you have now. It's only fair. After the mock exam, Jessica was completely mired in self-doubt and panic. My words had been a poison barb that lodged deep in her heart. She began to doubt the sachet's power, even questioning if all her previous successes were just a bubble about to burst. This fear made her even more hysterical. She started studying frantically, trying to prove herself through the most primitive, grueling methods. She barely slept, relying on massive amounts of coffee and energy drinks to stay awake. Her desk overflowed with workbooks, which she churned through one after another, as if only this relentless pace could bring her a sliver of security. But her body was already ravaged by the poison. The long-term nerve damage and mental exhaustion made it impossible for her to concentrate. She would often stare at a simple problem, her mind a complete blank. The more anxious she became, the less she could think, trapping her in a vicious cycle. Her grades, predictably, began to plummet. On the second mock exam, she barely stayed in the top 50 of our grade. By the third, she had dropped out of the top 100. Each drop in her ranking was like a hammer blow to her fragile nerves. I, on the other hand, soared. I held firmly to the number 1 spot, leaving the person in second place far behind every time. The tides at school had completely turned. The teachers and students who once placed Jessica on a pedestal now looked at her with a mixture of pity and regret. Everyone whispered that she was just a one-hit wonder, someone who had used up all her luck on the first mock exam, and was now back to her old self. I, in contrast, became the real genius, the one with stable, superior abilities. This huge reversal utterly destroyed Jessica's sanity. She blamed all her failures on me. She believed that I had somehow used an unknown method to steal the good luck that should have been hers. She started openly targeting and undermining me at school. She reported me to a teacher, claiming I was cheating by using my phone to look up information in class. Luckily, Leo stood up for me, testifying that I was just looking up the definition of an English word, and the crisis was averted. She spread rumors among classmates, saying the only reason I was number one again was because my parents had hired a professor from a prestigious university to tutor me privately. She even claimed I had stolen her study notes. The rumors were childish and ridiculous, and not many people believed them, but her undisguised malice still caused me a lot of trouble. The last straw was when she brought the fight to my family. With only a month left before the college entrance exams, my aunt and uncle stormed into our house in a rage. The moment they entered, my aunt pointed at my nose and screamed, "Chloe, you little bitch. What did you do to our Jessica? She's a wreck and it's all your fault." My parents were stunned by the sudden onslaught. "Helen, calm down. What happened?" My mom asked, trying to restrain her. "I can't calm down," my aunt yelled, shaking off my mom's hand and slamming a crumpled doctor's note on the table. "See for yourselves. The doctor says Jessica has severe anxiety and signs of depression. She won't say a word all day, just locks herself in her room. She's wasted away to nothing. Your daughter drove her to this." I glanced at the doctor's note and sneered inwardly. This was just the normal effect of the soul lock sachet. For her to only be showing signs of severe anxiety now, she must have been quite resilient. She's like this just because Chloe's grades are better than hers? My dad asked, frowning, clearly skeptical. "What do you mean? Grades are better?" My uncle roared from the side. "It's obvious that this Chloe is a vicious, cold-hearted person who can't stand to see our Jessica succeed. She must have pulled some strings behind the scenes, ostracizing our Jessica at school, spreading rumors about her. Otherwise, how could a girl with such a strong mind end up like this?" Jessica's talent for twisting the truth and playing the victim was clearly inherited from her mother. "Don't you dare make baseless accusations." My mom fired back. "We know what kind of child our Chloe is. But your Jessica, since she came to live with us, have we ever mistreated her? And now you're blaming us for her problems." "Exactly. I think she's just jealous of our Chloe. She couldn't handle her own failure, so she's trying to drag everyone else down with her," my dad added, furious. Just as a full-blown family war was about to erupt, Jessica, who had been hiding behind her parents, suddenly rushed forward. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hair was a mess, and she looked haggard and crazed. She pointed at me and shrieked, "It was you, Chloe. You did this to me. Give me back my luck. Give me back my top score." With that, she lunged at me like a madwoman, trying to scratch my face. Jessica came at me like a cornered animal, ready to take me down with her. Her nails were long and sharp. If she got a hold of me, my face would be ruined. I was prepared. The moment she lunged, I took a quick step back and ducked behind my father. She missed, and the force of her attack sent her stumbling to the ground. "Jessica!" my aunt and uncle cried, rushing to help her up. My parents were completely stunned by her crazed behavior. They looked at me, their eyes filled with fear and concern. "Look at her. Just look at what she's become." My aunt wailed, cradling Jessica. "How are we supposed to go on like this?" Jessica, still in her mother's arms, glared at me, muttering curses. "Chloe, I hope you rot in hell. I'll haunt you even as a ghost." My father's face darkened completely. He pointed to the door and ordered my uncle's family out. "Get out. Get out now. You're not welcome here." "Fine. Who wants to stay in your house anyway?" my uncle retorted, helping Jessica up and shooting me a hateful look. "Chloe, if anything happens to our Jessica, I'll never let you hear the end of it." With that, the three of them left, shouting and cursing all the way. The house was finally quiet, but the atmosphere was heavier than ever. My mom looked at me, her eyes red. Chloe, you've been through so much. I shook my head without a word. My dad paced back and forth in the living room. Finally, he stopped in front of me, sighed, and made a decision that caught me completely off guard. Chloe, for this last month before the exams, I think it's best if you move into the school dorms. I snapped my head up, looking at him in disbelief. Why? Your uncle and his family are completely unreasonable right now. I'm afraid they'll come back and cause more trouble, affecting your exams, my dad said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. It will be quieter in the dorms. With teachers and students around, they won't dare to do anything. After the exams are over, everything will be fine. His words sounded like he was looking out for me, but I heard the underlying meaning. He was scared. He was scared my uncle's family would cause another scene. He was scared that Jessica, in her unstable state, might actually hurt me. He was scared that dealing with this messy family drama would interfere with his work and his life. So he chose the simplest, most convenient solution: to temporarily isolate me, the source of the trouble. It was the same in my past life. When I was suffering the most from the Sachet's effects, when I needed my family's support and understanding more than ever, they used the same excuse to send me to the school dorms. They called it for my own good, but it was really a form of exile. In that moment, a tidal wave of disappointment and sorrow washed over me. I looked at the two people I called parents and suddenly, they felt like strangers. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded and said calmly, okay, I'll move out tomorrow. My compliance seemed to be a huge relief to them, as if my agreeing to leave had solved a massive problem. The next day, I packed a small suitcase with just a few changes of clothes and my most important review materials. As I was leaving, my mom pressed a wad of cash into my hand, her eyes red. Chloe, take care of yourself at school. If you need anything, just call me. And don't be angry with your father. He's just trying to do what's best for you. I looked at her and tried to smile, but I couldn't. I said nothing, grabbed my suitcase, and walked out of the home I had lived in for 18 years without looking back. The moment the door closed behind me, I felt like an exiled island, cut off from the sea of family affection. Fine. This was what I wanted. A world of my own. Lonely but peaceful. No one could bother me anymore. No one could influence me. I would use this final month to sharpen my blade to its finest point. Then, in the examination hall, I would deliver my final, fatal blow to Jessica, and to everyone else who had abandoned and hurt me. Life in the dorm was better than I expected. My roommates were all hardworking girls focused on their studies. We got along simply, and no one gossiped about my family affairs. Leo brought me a hot breakfast every single day, without fail. In this calm environment, my mind finally settled completely. I entered a state of pure, focused preparation. As for Jessica, though I didn't see her, I pieced together her situation from snippets of conversation among classmates. Apparently, she had stopped attending classes altogether, taking a leave of absence while her mother tutored her one-on-one at home. They said she smashed things and yelled at people every day, her condition worsening. They said her mother was desperately praying at temples, and even brought in masters to perform rituals at their home. Also, Jessica could take the exams. I listened to these rumors with a placid heart. She had brought all of this on herself. The college entrance exams, the battlefield that determined the fate of countless people, was about to begin. And I was ready. Get ready, Jessica. I'm about to deliver your special gift. June 7th. A clear day. The sun shone through a thin layer of clouds, bathing the entire city in bright light. The air was thick with a tense, solemn energy. The day of the exams had arrived. I woke up early, calmly washed up, and ate breakfast in the dorm. Leo had brought me a good luck meal of a sticky rice dumpling and 2 eggs. I smiled at his earnest face, which was practically screaming, "You got this," and took it from him. "Don't be nervous. You're gonna crush it," he said, more nervous than I was, his palms sweating. "I'm not nervous," I said calmly. "You, on the other hand, you passed your athletic assessments, so don't mess up the academic part. Don't worry. I've been burning the midnight oil, just so I can get into a college in the same city as you," he promised, puffing out his chest. We smiled at each other. Nothing more needed to be said. Walking into the testing center, watching the hurried students and anxious parents, I felt like an outsider. I wasn't nervous or excited, just filled with the profound calm before a storm. My assigned room was on the 3rd floor. As I found my seat, a familiar figure caught my eye. Jessica. Somehow, we had been assigned to the same room, and her seat was diagonally behind mine. She looked like a completely different person from a month ago. Her once slightly chubby cheeks were now gaunt, leaving her eyes looking unervingly large. Her complexion was a sickly yellow, her lips were cracked, and her gaze was unfocused. She radiated a dark, neurotic energy. She seemed to see me too, and her expression instantly twisted into one of venomous insanity. Her lips moved silently, as if she were cursing me. But what caught my attention the most was what she was wearing around her neck, a sachet, identical to the one I had returned to her. I sneered inwardly. It seemed her family, in their desperation to get her through the exam, had resorted to anything and everything. After all other methods failed, they placed their hopes back on the very charm that had once brought her good luck. They thought it was a lifeline, not knowing it was a death warrant. To maximize its effect, she had hung the concentrated poison directly around her neck, letting it press against her skin, forcing the toxic fumes into her lungs with every breath. How pathetically foolish. The bell signaling the start of the exam rang out. The proctors began distributing the test booklets and answer sheets. The only sound in the room was the rustling of paper. First subject, English. I got the test and quickly skimmed it. The difficulty was moderate, everything within my expectations. I took a deep breath, picked up my pen, and began. My thoughts were crystal clear. The pen glided smoothly across the paper, leaving behind neat, perfect answers. Time ticked by. I could feel a frantic, unstable breathing coming from behind me. I glanced at Jessica out of the corner of my eye. Her condition was just as I'd predicted. It was starting. At the beginning of the exam, she had entered that same state of mania as before. She answered questions at a furious pace, her handwriting almost sloppy, as if driven by an endless well of inspiration. But the high didn't last long. As time went on, the poison's effects were catalyzed by the high-stress, enclosed environment. Her face grew flushed, and a fine sheen of sweat beaded on her forehead. The hand holding the pen began to tremble, and her handwriting became crooked and messy. I saw her stop, shake her head violently, then grab her water bottle and chug from it, as if trying to clear her head. But it was all in vain. Her gaze grew vacant and lost. She stared at the test in front of her, the familiar words transforming into twisted, meaningless symbols in her eyes. Halfway through the exam, the inevitable happened. Jessica's condition had deteriorated to a critical point. She was no longer writing, just sitting there in a daze, sometimes covering her face with her hands, sometimes tearing at her hair in frustration. Her breathing grew heavy and ragged, like a caged beast emitting low, pained growls. The other students were distracted by her behavior, casting uneasy glances in her direction. The proctor noticed something was wrong and walked over to her, his brow furrowed. "Excuse me, are you all right? Are you not feeling well?" the teacher asked, leaning down. Jessica didn't seem to hear him, still lost in her own world. Suddenly, she snapped her head up. Her eyes were bloodshot and wild. She looked at her test, and the dense text began to spin, leap, and split apart, finally converging into a giant, mocking face. "Ah!" A shrill, blood-curdling scream erupted from her, plunging the entire room into a dead silence. Everyone froze, their pens hovering over their papers. "Don't look at me. Get away. All of you, get away from me." Jessica shot up from her seat, her hands flailing wildly in the air as if fighting off invisible demons. Her movements were so violent that she swept all her pens and her water bottle off the desk, sending them clattering to the floor. She lost her balance and fell backward, her chair toppling over with a heavy thud. She lay there on the ground, her limbs convulsing, muttering incomprehensible words. "Quick! Get the medics!" The proctor's face went pale as he snapped into action. He signaled for the other proctor to maintain order while he rushed out of the room to call for the medical team on standby. The room descended into chaos. The students stared in horror at Jessica on the floor, whispering amongst themselves. "What's wrong with her? Did she snap? The pressure must have been too much. A mental breakdown. This is terrifying." How are we supposed to finish the test now? And I, the person closest to her, never once turned to look. My pen continued to move steadily across the essay paper, writing the final period. Then, I put down my pen and carefully reviewed my test and answer sheet, making sure there were no mistakes. Only after all that was done did I finally look up and calmly watch the unfolding drama I had orchestrated. The medics arrived quickly. Along with the teachers, they scrambled to lift the still twitching Jessica onto a stretcher and rush her out of the room. The wind blew her answer sheet to the floor, where it lay alone in the aisle. I could see it clearly. On the sheet that should have been filled with answers, there was nothing but her sloppily written name in the information section. The rest was completely blank. Order was soon restored. The teacher calmed everyone down, announced that the test would continue, and that they would add extra time to compensate for the interruption. The students gradually settled down and returned to their tests. And I raised my hand. "Teacher, I'd like to turn in my test." To the astonishment of everyone, I took my exam papers and calmly walked out of the chaotic room. The sunlight in the hallway was a bit blinding. I leaned against the railing and took a deep breath. The air still seemed to hold the echo of Jessica's desperate scream. It was all over. No, perhaps for her it was just beginning. A mental breakdown. A score of 0 on her college entrance exams. The valedictorian title she had considered hers for the taking, the dream she had been willing to steal through the most wicked means, had ended in this tragic, absurd way. This was my final judgment for her. A fair, indisputable judgment. The college entrance exams ended in a strange atmosphere. The news of Jessica's public breakdown spread like wildfire through the school, and even our small city. The rumors were rampant. Some said she had cracked under the immense academic pressure. Others claimed she had a pre-existing mental illness triggered by the exams. Some even connected her to me, weaving melodramatic tales of a genius and a commoner, saying she had been so psychologically twisted by living in my shadow that she finally snapped. The truth, however, remained buried beneath the swirling gossip, unknown to all. Jessica was taken to the hospital and never came out. I learned from my mother's occasional phone calls that she was diagnosed with acute drug-induced psychosis, accompanied by severe hallucinations and cognitive impairment. In simple terms, she had gone insane, with little chance of recovery. My aunt and uncle seemed to age overnight. They sold their house and took Jessica to a major hospital in the capital, chasing a final glimmer of hope. They left without a word to our family, as if the pathetic bond of kinship between us had dissolved along with Jessica's sanity. I didn't care. On the day the exam scores were released, I was at home packing for college. My dad was the one who checked my score. His voice trembled with so much excitement he could barely speak. "Chloe, 732. You're the top scorer in the state for STEM. You're the state champion." I hung up, my heart calm. This result was exactly what I had expected. I had earned it, with the efforts of 2 lifetimes. Soon, our phone was ringing off the hook, and our doorstep was crowded with reporters and university admissions officers. I became a local celebrity, showered with praise and accolades. My parents reveled in a glory they had never known, smiling from ear to ear as they accepted everyone's congratulations, as if they had forgotten how they once despaired of me, how they had cast me out. In the midst of all this joy and commotion, an unexpected visitor arrived, shattering the peace. It was my aunt. She came alone. In just 1 month, she looked 20 years older. Her hair was graying, her eyes were hollow, and her face was etched with deep wrinkles. The moment she saw me, she fell to her knees. "Chloe, I'm begging you. Please save Jessica," she cried, clutching at my legs. "We were wrong. We know everything now." I frowned and took a step back, avoiding her touch. "I don't know what you're talking about." "We know everything," she said, her hands trembling as she pulled a few items from a cloth bag. "When we were packing Jessica's things, we found this in the secret compartment of her desk, and this," she opened her palm. Lying there was a crudely made empty sachet and some black, herbal residue. At first, we didn't know what it was. We just thought it was strange. Then we found the chat history on her phone with a distant relative. That relative told her that this soul lock sachet could steal someone else's good luck and give it to her. My aunt sobbed, her words broken and disjointed. She had found all the chat logs on Jessica's phone with the relative who dabbled in the dark arts. The records detailed exactly how Jessica had conceived the evil idea, how she had obtained the wicked sachet, and how she had planned, step by step, to destroy me. The truth was laid bare in the cruelest way possible. She wronged you. She was blinded by greed. She deserves to die. My aunt cried, slapping her own face again and again until it was red and swollen. But Chloe, she's still your sister. She's gotten her punishment now. She's lost her mind. The doctors say she might never get better. I'm begging you, you're so smart. You're a genius. You must have a way, right? Help her, please, just make her lucid again. Even if she has to go to jail, it's better than being a lunatic for the rest of her life. I looked at her coldly, at this woman who was still making excuses for her daughter. Every word she spoke was filled with regret, but that regret was not for me. It was for her own ruined daughter. If Jessica's plan had succeeded, if I were the one lying in a psychiatric hospital today, would she be on her knees, begging Jessica to spare me? The answer was obvious. Just then my parents, recovering from their shock, finally reacted. They had heard my aunt's confession, and their faces were ashen. Helen, what you're saying, is it all true? My mother's voice trembled. Cease. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what we did to Chloe. My aunt cried, crawling to my mother's feet. My mom looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt, pain, and endless remorse. She wanted to hug me, but seemed to lack the courage. She just stood there, crying silently. My dad's face was grim. He pointed at my aunt, his body shaking with rage, unable to speak. I ignored their emotions. I took out my laptop, opened it, and pulled up a folder I had prepared long ago. I turned the screen toward my aunt. Displayed on it was the anonymous help request I had posted on the medical forum, along with the old doctor's detailed reply. I found this the day after I received the sachet, I said, my voice as cold as ice. From the very beginning, I knew what it was, and I knew what Jessica was trying to do. My aunt froze, staring blankly at the text on the screen, the color draining from her face completely. I continued, the reason I didn't expose her was because I wanted her to have a taste of this soul-lock sachet herself. She sowed the wind, and now she reaps the whirlwind. She brought all of this on herself. It has nothing to do with anyone else. As for you asking me to save her, I curled my lip into a mocking smile. Sorry, I'm not a god, nor am I a saint. I'm just an ordinary person you all nearly destroyed. I earned my top score with my own abilities, not some imaginary luck. My life is my own to live, and hers ended the moment she decided to harm me. With that, I closed the laptop and didn't spare her another glance. Finally, I looked at her, and at my parents who were drowning in their own remorse, and said, don't ever come looking for me again. In the end, I turned down the offers from Harvard and MIT, and chose to major in clinical medicine at Northwood Medical University. The decision stunned everyone. My parents tried to persuade me, arguing that medicine was too demanding, and that it was a waste of my talent as the state's top scorer to attend a school that wasn't a top-tier Ivy. But my mind was made up. Those dark days in the psych ward in my past life had given me the most profound understanding of the darkness of human nature and the fragility of the human mind. I chose medicine not for some grand purpose of saving the world. I just wanted to understand how those invisible wounds could destroy a person. I wanted to save myself, and I wanted to help others who, like me, had once struggled in the darkness. I refused my parents' offer to drive me to school. After receiving my acceptance letter, I packed a single suitcase, bought a train ticket south, and left the city that held so many painful memories. As the train pulled away from the station, I watched the platform recede, my parents' figures shrinking in the crowd, and I felt no sense of attachment or longing. I knew this was a farewell, a clean break from everything in my past. I did not forgive them. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be healed. Blood ties are not an excuse for abandonment or moral judgment. Their lack of faith in me, their betrayal, was a thorn that would forever be embedded in my heart. Perhaps time would dull the pain, but for now, all I wanted was distance. I needed a new beginning, a place where no one knew me, where no past could haunt me. College life was even more fulfilling and vibrant than I had imagined. I was like a dry sponge, soaking up medical knowledge with a ravenous appetite. Anatomy, physiology, pathology, the complex and profound subjects held a fatal attraction for me. I lost myself in the library and the lab, savoring the pure joy that knowledge brought. I was no longer just a bookworm. I joined the school's debate club, honing my logic and public speaking skills. I went hiking and camping with my club mates, saw the ocean, and experienced the beauty and vastness of the world. My face began to wear more and more genuine smiles. At the university's opening ceremony, I saw a familiar face. Lau. He had actually gotten into the physical therapy program at our school. He said he didn't want to see any more athletes end their careers early due to injury. He wanted to become a great therapist. Under the sun, he wore a simple white t-shirt. When he smiled, he still had that same sunny, carefree look. He walked up to me and, like a magician, pulled a bottle of ice-cold mint soda from behind his back and handed it to me. "Hey, new classmate. It's a pleasure to meet you." I took the soda. The coldness of the bottle seeped through my palm, sending a refreshing chill through my body that made me feel more awake and alive than ever before. I twisted off the cap. With a hiss, bubbles rose, and the fresh scent of mint filled the air. I tilted my head back and took a long drink. The cool liquid slid down my throat, washing away the last traces of summer heat, and it seemed, all the remaining shadows in my heart. I looked at him, at the clear blue sky and the bright version of myself reflected in his eyes, and smiled from the bottom of my heart. Long time no see, Leo. The hatred had been left behind, on that train to a distant past. My new, bright future was just beginning. In this mint-tinged September, I would, like a sunflower, always live facing the sun.